Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's late October and it's time for another update to my Little Big Year, which is my 2024 quest to see and photograph as many birds as possible here on my home patch in eastern Massachusetts, which is the Horn Pond Recreation Area. It's nice to be back on my home turf. I've been traveling quite a bit for the last month. For the first 2 weeks of October, I was on a work trip to France, and then I came back from that trip, had a few days at home, then had to take off on another trip for a family wedding in California. So I'm now back from that trip and looking forward to continue the Little Big Year here on my home patch. So as many of you know, one of the nice things about traveling is that it really works well with the hobby of birding. Adds a little extra interest to the trips when you travel because there's new birds to see and so forth. So I was able to do some birding on both of those trips, even though it wasn't the primary purpose. And I'm going to be making some videos as well. So in fact, the first video from my trip to France is actually already out, posted on the channel. So feel free to check that one out if you'd like to see what I saw there. I had a lot of fun and had some nice sightings. I'll also be making a second video from my trip to France and at least one video from the trip to California, and I'll get all those out before the end of the year. Okay, so let's get into this Little Big Year update. So the original goal for my Little Big Year was 125 species by the end of 2024, but we've already blown past that. At the end of the most recent video update, we were at 131 species, and we are going to add several more in this video. So the first species to look at is this immature white-crowned sparrow, which showed up in the community garden area. This is a very common sparrow in the western part of North America, but it's a lot less common here on the East Coast. And having said that, I was expecting to get it onto the list this year because it does seem to show up in the community garden every fall. I'm actually a little surprised that this is the only one that I've seen so far this year, but got some pretty nice video of it, as you can see. The adult white-crowned sparrows are very striking with really bold white and black stripes on the head, but I think this immature is actually kind of a neat-looking bird too with the tan and brown stripes. Okay, I've been doing pretty well with raptors this year, and another new one for the list is this red-shouldered hawk. Red-shouldered hawks are a lot less common than red-tailed hawks here in Massachusetts, but they do seem to be increasing a little bit. And this is another bird that I was sort of counting on getting at some point this year, so good to finally get this one on the list. Okay, so next up is this video clip I got of a palm warbler. It's not a new one for the list. We did get some photos in the spring, but I think this video clip is definitely worth seeing. So this encounter was actually a good test of the autofocus system on my Canon R7 camera because the bird is moving around pretty erratically, and there's often some grass and branches that come into the foreground between the camera and the bird. I'd say the autofocus is doing pretty well, but certainly not perfect. It tends to lose the focus when the grass and vegetation gets in front of the bird, but then it really corrects quickly and then it jumps back onto the bird. So you just have a little moment of losing of the focus. Now these newer cameras like the Canon R7 are able to detect the eye of a bird and then stay focused on that. And it does that both for video and still photo shooting. This is pretty cool technology and it does work pretty well, but I've noticed that when the bird turns its head so that the eyes are not visible, then all of a sudden the autofocus will start drifting around off the bird, so it's definitely not perfect. Next up is another warbler that is a new one for the year, and that is a Blackpole Warbler. Wasn't able to get any video this time, but I did get some good photographs of this bird. This is warbler species number 21 for the year, so we're doing pretty well for warblers, and that is one of the reasons why the Little Big Year list is getting as high as it is. Blackpole warblers are one of those warblers that looks completely different in the fall migration than it does in the spring. In the spring, when they come through, they're crisp black and white with no color on them at all, and then in the fall they have these strong yellowish tones, so it's almost like seeing two different birds. It's been a good year for belted kingfishers here on my home patch. We've had at least 4 of them all fall, patrolling around and making a lot of noise and catching fish. They're skittish and difficult to photograph, but this one seemed to be in a little bit more of a mellow mood and let me get reasonably close. It's been quite a while since I added a new duck species to the list, but fall is definitely duck season on my home patch. We've been getting a lot more variety, and I was quite happy when this female Gadwall showed up because that's another new one for the year. Gadwalls are overall pretty common in Massachusetts, but they tend to be quite scarce on my home patch. So this is one I was not counting on getting for the year. So definitely very pleased to see this one show up. It's not the most exciting duck in the world. It does look a lot like a female mallard, but they all count as one, and I was very happy to see it. It's always impressive to see how large a fish birds like cormorants and herons can swallow whole. Next up is another bird that I was definitely counting on getting at some point this year, and that is this hairy woodpecker. Hairy woodpeckers, of course, are famously similar to downy woodpeckers. They're just larger. They do have different personalities, though. Downy woodpeckers are very unafraid birds. They'll actually eat out of your hand here on my home patch, whereas hairy woodpeckers are much more skittish. So I can't imagine a hairy woodpecker ever landing on your hand and taking seed. So it did take a little while before I was able to get some decent video and photo of a hairy woodpecker. In fact, this isn't the best clip in the world, but it's time to get these birds on the list because the year is getting short. Another nice warbler encounter that I had was this Nashville Warbler, which I found in the community garden on a rainy day. So I had already added Nashville Warbler to the Little Big Year list in the previous video, but it was based on a couple of photographs that weren't so great. So I didn't think they were quite good enough to put this bird on the channel life list. So now with this video clip here, I'm definitely happy to do that. And add this to the channel life list. Okay, and finally one more new addition to the year, which is long overdue, and that is herring gull. Herring gull is a bird that I see almost every day, 3 seasons out of the year. They're actually not really very common in the summer, but certainly in the other 3 seasons I'm seeing them all the time. But they're almost always floating out in the middle of the main pond, which is really just a little too far to get any good photographs or videos. So I've been waiting patiently for a better opportunity to add them to the list. We've gotten almost no rain in October. The water level in the main pond has gone down quite a bit, and it's opened up this little spit of land that just comes out from the area right near where I park. So all of a sudden it's gotten very easy to see the gulls. They've been roosting there. And so let's go ahead and get herring gull on the list. Herring gulls are 4-year gulls, which means it takes them 4 years before they reach their full adult plumage. And that means that you see all sorts of different looks to them, because as they go through the first 4 years, the plumage changes quite a bit. So I'm not really a gull expert. I'm not going to talk about this too much, but this one here is an adult with the gray back and a little bit of red on the bill. And these 2 very dark gulls here are immature birds that are actually less than 1 year old. They start out looking quite dark. Okay, that's all I have for this episode. The Little Big Year count is now up to 137 birds, and I'm now really confident that we're going to break through 140. And I think there's actually even a chance that we can get to 150 birds by the end of the year. I'm really quite interested now to see how high we can get the count. If you enjoyed this video and you're still watching, please consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.